What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Goats of Growth. Today, my guest is Chris Lee, Chief Revenue Officer of Interos, which is a supply chain and risk intelligence company that builds the most trusted and transparent supply chains in the world. Chris is also an executive board member of Sendoso, a gifting platform, while advising companies like Aviso, an AI guided selling platform, and Zilliant, which transforms how businesses use data to price and sell. Chris, welcome to the Goats of Growth.
Jay, pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the conversation, and I look forward to hopefully getting the opportunity to share some focus and ideas of my over 30 years of being in sales and in the software as a service industry.
Yeah, for sure. You and I had spoken before, and you certainly are a wealth of knowledge that I'm hoping to at least tap into a tenth of that today in the time that we have. But speaking of that, one of the things that I'm sure that folks would be interested in knowing, as I was just reading your quick bio there, is you're an advisor on a couple of different companies. So obviously CRO of Interos, and then somehow you find time to be a board member on on a
Right.
company and then advising two others. Tell me about that. Tell me. If I were a VP of sales or a CRO somewhere at a mid-market size software company, and I'm looking to get on a board or become an advisor of other companies, how would I go about doing that? What's your advice?
Yeah, great question. What I would do, Jay, is that as a chief revenue officer in many of the companies I've worked for and work for, there's obviously you have your own board of directors, you have your own board of advisors, and a lot of the folks there have portfolio companies that they're still overseeing outside of your company. So they'll see that you provide a certain type of value, or they'll see that you've got a process that you use for selling or anywhere in the revenue side of the house. And they'll typically want to have you be a part of one of those portfolio startup companies where you can share your ideas, your thoughts, and be able to really help accelerate their business and the go to market a lot faster. So I would say in net of the whole process is being able to work with your own board of investors or what have you of your organization and your CEO to get those relationships and connections.
Got it. That makes sense. So, in other words, do a really good job with what you're doing, and people who care will notice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the exact point. And being able to uh, be more proactive. Don't
Hmm.
wait for them to reach out to you. Be
Hmm.
more inquisitive of like how do I go about becoming someone within your portfolio of other software companies that I can provide a value to you, and
Hmm.
that's where it starts.
Tell me a little bit about Interos, and where you guys are and what value you guys add in your role there as the CRO.
Well, I can tell you, Jay, this is one of those industries that I've grown up in where I can
Hmm.
tell you that I see a huge opportunity. This is one of the hottest markets right now. I grew up in the world of CRM with Siebel and Salesforce and pre-IPOs there, and then pre-IPO with DocuSign. And I can tell you that there's a pattern that happens in these type of industries, and it's typically where you're replacing a human touch Excel spreadsheet. And with that, many of the things that I'm looking at right now is where Interos comes in is really is that solution, if you will, is for companies that are looking at their supply chain and wondering where there's a risk, right? Where is that potential opportunity that comes in for a breach? And the difference that Interos brings to the table is that you've got a lot of companies that look at focusing on within my supply chain, where is a potential breach coming from? But from a cyber perspective, what we do is we look at it from across six different risk factors. We go into geopolitical, cyber, financials. We look at restrictive, geopolitical, catastrophic, and within an ESG. And within all of those, you're able to take a look at your supply chain and figure out where those risks will come into it. You're still majorly exposed with just tracking cyber, and many companies think they're okay with it. And I'll give you an example. There's companies that I'm working with today where they've got a what they call supply chain, and then TPRMG, which is third party risk management risks area, and then the CISO has another idea. But you want a solution like an Interos where the only one is a single pane of glass across their entire organization. Because when you have those areas of supply chain and third party risk management and a CISO's ideas and maybe a CFO, there's gaps, right? And then there's point solutions that each one of them has. But if you're able to get one that goes across all, then you're really able to have that one source of truth that everyone's pulling the same data from.
You must be selling to quite large organizations then. Is that fair to say?
That's very much fair to say. We're focused on we're one of also the only companies that goes across a breadth of different verticals, but
Mm,
we're really focused more so in financial services. We're focused
mm,
more in, for instance, the federal government, right? So the Navy and Homeland Security. We're working with NASA. We're working with big aerospace and defense like L3 Harris. We're
mm,
working with organizations like Disney. And that's where you really able to have a solution that can go over top of any one of those verticals. But
mm,
it's that financial impact. When I think about any one of those verticals, Jay, um, when a CFO is prioritizing a decision in software, they're looking at it as to, hey, what's the return? What's the financial impact that this product is going to give us? And
mm,
if you think about the companies like I was with, Salesforce, that's more of like a clerical software. If there's a hiccup or stoppage, it's not going to change your business. But if
mm,
you're not monitoring your supply chain and there's a breach of any kind, that could be not only business stopping, but it could put you out of business, right? And
mm.
then there's multiple millions of dollars of reputational damage that you're going to have to come back from. So as a CFO, that's what I'm focused on, and that's where you start to see the value of where Interos is.
Tell me about your role as the CRO in your team, because I would imagine, part of what you might be looking for as from a direct selling perspective are folks who can navigate conversations with different stakeholders, right? Because this isn't a single threaded deal like you're selling to a CRO, as an example, right? You have to sell across the enterprise, right? So tell me a little bit about building your team and how you see it moving forward.
Yeah. So the way I built my team is I looked at the verticals that were really were hot in, and we have some of the top names in. And I brought in sales, customer success, solution consulting, that where they had veterans, where we had veterans coming in that have lived in those spaces for 10, 20 years. And
Mm,
by doing that, it's not so much as that now you've got to figure out a way to get in your foot in the door of these organizations. Now I'm able to come in and say, hey, Jay, I've worked with you in the past for the past 20 years. I have another solution that I think will provide you more value, and let's have that opportunity to talk. So
mm,
bringing in the right players in that sense that have lived in those verticals, because
mm,
I think I can teach them what the value of the product is and what it can do. The
mm,
other is if I can't find those folks, I'll also look at more of the supply chain and understanding what the issues and challenges are so that we can now map that product back to the value that it can bring to those organizations. So it's really
mm.
about either the experience in terms of being in that vertical for as long as it is, or it's also about understanding what that vertical is, as in supply chain, and being able to understand, or the industry, and being able to understand how it applies, the software applies to fixing the solution, the problems with the solution.
Got it. So it's it's domain expertise, and then also how long you've been selling into that into
Absolutely.
those particular verticals as well, right? Because you understand who the stakeholders are, perhaps maybe by name, and even if not by name, at least you understand what they're thinking and some of the challenges that they have, so you can hold a credible conversation, I guess, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jay, I can tell you it's also about, in all the years I've been doing this, it's also about being able to um, let customers understand that there is a customer support side of this where you don't want to come across as being that organization or that person that they can't trust, right? Where if there's a problem or an issue, they can't find you, right? They want to know
Mm,
that you're in the foxhole with them. If there's an issue, you're there for them. And that's
mm,
why you're able in over 30 years of doing this is that still have those relationships that you
mm,
can walk into it because it's important to understand that, hey, I sold you something that I told you it would do. And if it's
mm,
not going to do it, that's on me. And I need to help
mm,
you get out of that issue or that challenge. And that's where that trust factor comes into it. And that's really
mm.
important in being able to hold those long-term relationships.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's transition a little bit into something that I wanted to talk about when I initially reached out, which is, obviously AI is hot, of course, right? It's. I mean, it's more than hot. That's sort of trite to say that. It's it's one of those things where it's ubiquitous throughout many organizations, and particularly as part of the go-to-market stack and tech stack, as you're enabling sales teams and making sure that the team that you just alluded to is productive and have the right tools. Tell me about that. Tell me where Interos and you have used AI, are using AI throughout your sales organization now. And then also just give me a sense of like how much are you evaluating on a regular basis as far as the tools are concerned to make sure that you're not missing out on, the next Salesforce that really transform the way your go-to-market team operates,
Wow. So I can tell you it's interesting because I grew up in the world of like 15 years ago, the biggest, hottest thing was AI and machine learning. And if you could weave that into any one of your sales processes, then that was going to get you that much further. And the reality was, it wasn't really even that far. It wasn't really that great of a technology back then. Now, AI truly is a game changer. But I also feel a little bit, Jade, like it's becoming a me too, right? Everyone says they have AI, but it's really about when it comes down to the features of your product and being able to show how it works and letting them know that AI is behind it, that's super helpful. And I can tell you that from an Interos perspective, one of the great things about our product, which I love, is that you're also able to, when you see that there's an issue or a potential breach coming your way, or there's a risk, through leveraging our AI, we're able to see those signals and take action very quickly. And then
Mm-hmm.
also allow the AI to be able to give you the recommendations as to, hey, there's a war that's breaking out. These suppliers are here. We'd recommend that you pivot to these other suppliers in this part of the world. And being able to have that ability to react that quickly versus working off of stale data, and then also being able to get the recommendations as to, hey, here are the suppliers that you should really pivot to. That's really super helpful. So it's really being able to not only leverage AI to get the signals, um, a stronger signal so that you can take those actions, but it is about, what are the recommended actions to take. And I think that's the best area where we start to see AI play into this. And then we're also seeing AI uh, help in terms of really understanding the verticals that we're in and the challenges that they have, and being able to map where those suppliers are to the challenges that they have in terms of just an overall end-to-end supply chain.
Yeah, for sure. So that last point that you just mentioned there, it's you're able to more quickly discern. Okay, here are the folks or the companies, the maybe the even the stakeholders to target and go after, as opposed to maybe I don't know 5 years ago you weren't able to do that. Maybe the sales cycles were ended up being longer, or maybe a competitor gets in where maybe you would have missed. Is that fair to say?
Jay, it's a game changer.
Mm,
Back 20 years ago, or when I was selling the software back then, you had to just figure out, hey, where do I think the right area of an organization is to play in? Who's the right contact? What's the ICP that we really want to focus on? And with AI, you're now able to just simply ask the question, like, who
yeah.
in an organization in that vertical would be more attuned to what the offer is that we have? And then on top of that, it can give you a whole list of, here are the use cases that they're looking to solve for. Here's the ROI they're looking to solve for. Here are the buzzwords. So it literally will put together a sales playbook
Hmm.
for that person and that area of the business to sell into.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Speaking of playbooks, I know that you created a methodology that I want to talk about called Power. I'm assuming it's an acronym for something. I'd love to get into that and tell me about the origin of it
Yeah.
and how it's impacting your you know organization now and maybe even in the past.
Yeah. So, so I came up with this idea. It's an acronym of
Hmm.
power. And I always talk about how you need to have power in your opportunities. And we're driving that right now at Interos. But the reason why I brought up or created power was because I started to see there's a pattern. Every great deal needs to be driven through basically five areas, which is one, you need to make sure that you have the right partners in an opportunity, right? Who
Hmm.
can you bring in that will help you leverage not only the opportunity and the contacts, relationships, but also being able to provide the credibility in coming in to an organization. If I'm selling to a CFO, it's really important to know that he or she feels comfortable knowing that Deloitte or Accenture or the big GSIs believe in you enough where they're going to give you the validation to come in and talk to them. So that's really big on the power side. And then it's also understanding the organizational chart, the organization chart. So understand where is it within that company, that who are the players that you need to talk to, and then being able to connect the dots to that to say, okay, so if I know Jay Webb and I see that he's here in the organization, I need to get there. Which one of my board members, which one of my advisors that I work with today that they can get me to Jay? Right. So now you start to map out the fact of like, who is it within the organization? And then how do I overlay that and connect the dots back to the folks that I know, that my executive team knows? And again, it's eliminating a lot of the time that it'll take to just have a normal conversation with a stranger. But if you're able to validate also that that person, Jay, knows Dave or Cindy, then I'm able to build that trust very quickly to come in and sell. So being able to have and understand the organizational chart is really important. And then also there's a need to have a war room, right? So that's the W side of this, which is you wanted to bring in your sales team, your customer success, your solutions consultant, your salesperson, your own leadership, and be able to take a look at the opportunity at hand and understand I'm not as concerned as why we'll win the deal as much as why we won't win the deal. So I want to know, where is it that, that I feel vulnerable, or where are the areas that I feel keep me up at night, where I need to know that I have coverage on that. And I may be only looking at certain areas, but having the team in there and being able to get a view on where there's other areas that I may be exposed is really important. And then also it's important to see from a customer success side, they may want to see where the opportunity is from a renewal perspective, or solution consultant may say, hey, technically you're exposed here. From a leadership side, well, your use case and your ROI needs to get tightened. Or so it's really about having that team view. So to have a war room is another really key factor to try to drive the deal. The other is E, which is executive sponsor. So you want to make sure that any opportunity that you have has an executive sponsor assigned to it. So for instance, if I had an opportunity at ABC company, I want to look at all the opportunities I have for the quarter, for the year, and I want to assign an executive from our organization, a CFO, CEO, CPO. And when you look at that, I want to know that in the beginning of my quarter that I may be tracking a deal, I have the executive sponsor send a note to Jay. Hey, Jay, thank you so much for your business. I just want to say, let's leave the lines of communication open. If you need anything, I'm here and I'll do the same. That way, if there's a renewal with an upsell or it's a new deal, then you're able, it's not a Hail Mary at the end of a quarter if something goes sideways, for that executive sponsor to reach out and say, hey, Jay, based off my last interaction, I told you I'd leave the lines of communication open. Well, I think I may want to reach out just to say, hey, is there anything we can do to help the deal along? So that's more of like trying to get the deal done, but it's also an opportunity for an executive sponsor to just show their commitment and make sure they're in the foxhole, as I said before, with them. Because customers buy, if I'm buying a $1 million software package, I want to know that if I'm in trouble, there's executives that I can reach out to. And that also helps the sales cycle along. And then the last piece is really it's understanding the R, which is the roadmap to closure, right? So I want to be able to look at any opportunity within the quarter and reverse engineer from the time of the end of the quarter to back to where we are within the quarter to say, what are the steps that I really need to get done in order and complete it in order to get the deal closed. Now I can go all the way back to the beginning of the quarter. It can go back as far as you'd like, but it's also a great chance to present this back to your prospect, right? As you're going through it, because you want to be more consultative. You don't want to feel like you're a salesperson pushing a deal. You want to say, Jay, listen, let's sit down. I know that we're trying to drive this to closure. we know we want to both try to get this done by this time. And that's also an opportunity for them to say, oh, no, Chris, you're crazy. It's not going to close by then. Okay,
Mhm.
well, let's work backwards and see what we can do. But it's also identifying on both sides. And the way I position it is, hey, Jay, let me understand what it is we need to get done. I just need to make sure I have the right resources for you as well so that we can wrap this up. So, and now you're both sitting across from each other, looking at the table, looking at the timetable, saying, okay, so here's where we are. And you may there realize you don't have enough time or you have plenty of time. But if you track that week over week, then you know that if there's a hiccup, that you have to recover. So that's kind of the big overview very quickly on what power is.
Yeah, for sure. One of the I'll recap that in a moment, but I also wrote down team almost as an acronym too, and I don't have an acronym. I don't have what each one of those letters mean, but as you were going through, so I'll recap, right? So having the right partners,
Yep.
the P, org chart, right? Understanding that. War room, making sure that you have the right people in the war room, and looking at all of the risks and those kinds of things with it. Executive level sponsor and roadmap, right? But every single one of those, with maybe the exception of roadmap, but actually even with roadmap, because you were saying sitting down with somebody, it's a team, right? It's
Yep.
team selling is basically what you're saying here. And one of the questions that I had, I actually wrote this in parentheses, is when it comes back to the org chart um, is there anything beyond LinkedIn that tells you sort of the connected lines between Jay Webb and Dave and Cindy and whomever? Do you use? Is there an AI tool as an example, something where it's like, okay, boom, here are the people in the organization that are connected to these people at this company?
Yeah. So there's a number of systems out there today which are really impressive, which
Yeah.
can give you a number of insights as to who's connected to who. There's a number that are out there today. Connect the dots is one of them as well.
Huh.
And but it's one of those situations where you want to try to get as much information, not just who reports to who. We can get that in the org chart. But what I always like to do is I also look at the investor presentations, not
Hmm.
just the 10K, but looking at an investor presentation of a public company, you will see the CFO, CRO, CEO, all of the C-suite talking about what's in their plans for the upcoming year. What's the 2 to 3 goals that they want to focus on, and in there they'll mention the different groups they're going to be working with. They'll talk about what they want to take out of the business or add to the business. And then they'll talk about the issues and challenges that they have. And if you're able to take that information and now attach that to your value proposition and say, hey, Jay, you got 3 things you're trying to drive at. I can help you with 2. And here's how
Mm-hmm.
I can do that. And here's the financial impact. That's more impactful than just saying, hey, I have a really cool product to sell you. That is turning this from a nice to have into a must have when you start to attach those back. But getting back to your original question, which is, yeah, there's a lot of different software packages out there today that can show you how each person is connected. But it's
Mm.
really understanding also and doing research and looking at what did Jay say in this article, what's really hyped up in this article. And Jay, I got a funny story for you.
Yeah.
So there was an executive that that I did research on way back when, and I went in after I did the research and I found out a few different things. I found out that in this diary that this person posted, that they always like to be home to see their kids off to school. They had 3 children. He was a runner, and he always made sure that he was at his daughter's um horseback riding competitions.
Mm.
So, of course, going into that, sat down. Jay, great to see you. Hey, Chris, how was your morning? Well, my knee is killing me. I just ran 8 miles this morning. Well, you're right. I'm a runner. Yeah, yeah. But my 3 kids, with at breakfast this morning, we talked about, and it's like, wow. So now we had this conversation, and it was truthful. I do have three
Yeah.
kids, and I'm a runner, and it was funny because it just connected. Like it wasn't. I didn't even talk about the product, but it was doing that research on each of those individuals, and then coming in and and being able to have a real conversation. And the one thing I can tell you, Jay, that I always tell the sales folks are, you want to come in and be real, right?
Yeah.
You want to be a human being. We're not curing world hunger. We're not helping, any victims anywhere. We sell software, right? At the end
Yeah.
of the day, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Have fun with
Yeah.
what you do and be
Yeah.
a real human being. And if you have a product that can solve for that person's issue, great. If you don't push it. There's plenty others out there that will want your product, and you have to realize it is about relationships, and it is about uh, really truly connecting with the folks that are the stakeholders too.
Any chance you brought up your daughter's equestrian lessons, or was this there as
Don't
well? You
worry,
left
Jay.
that part
I
out.
looked you up too, by the way. Don't make me go down this path. No, I didn't because I didn't have the horseback riding background. I knew if they were going to ask me any questions about it, I would stumble. So I didn't go there. So I brought up some other things about sports, and it went far either way. So
Well, I was going to say, well, I have to ask you the obvious question, like, how did the meeting end? Where did the meeting go from there? Was there a definitive next step, or what happened?
so it's interesting. So it was when I was with Salesforce, and it enabled me based off of the trust factor to bring and allow Mark Benioff, our CEO, in to meet their CEO. So I knew Mark was coming into town, and he did the introduction from Mark to that CEO. And once you have a CEO to CEO relationship and connection, you're off to the races. And as soon as he agreed to that, because he trusted the fact that I was in it to really do the right thing by them versus just trying to sell software and hope it worked. And and we built enough of a bond where that trust factor came into it. And when Mark came out, he slayed it, and we had a nice sized deal. So it was a great opportunity.
I'd say that's the epitome of executive sponsorship, right there, right? The E,
That
the
was the
E.
epitome. Uh, and again,
That's right.
it goes back to if you can get the C suite into your opportunities, and C suite to C suite, you're going to definitely get the deal wrapped up because you build a bond, you build a relation, and the C suite knows you're not running anywhere, you're not going anywhere, you'll be there for them, and that's important.
That's right. That's right. You said something that I want to actually turn back on you when you were talking about, looking at not only the 10Ks but also the investment. I forget the terminology there, but to really dig deep into what's keeping them up at night and how they're planning. So I want to ask you, like, what are you planning as you look into 2026, and what are the two or three goals that you have or initiatives that where you are really need to be focused on in order to execute whatever goals you have for 2026?
So, Jay, the thing that in over my almost 25, over almost 30 years of doing this, the one thing that I'm doing is I'm taking best practices from the CEOs and sales leaders that I've known.
Hmm.
And the thing that I'm focused on now that I've been in Interos and I really see where the industry is, the lay of the land in terms of the competition. The one thing that I've seen happen and be successful over and over again is being able to be the visionary. And
Hmm.
if you're able to have a vision of where your business is going to go and why it's important for that customer to hold your hand and take you on that journey, that's super important. And I can
Hmm.
tell you, this industry is so hot and so nascent and so early stage that I can tell you that the winner in this space is going to be the one that has the platform. So now I'm changing my sales presentations and the pitches to focus more on the end to end because nobody else has that. And then the other piece is I'm establishing the vision. Where do we want to be in the next 2 to 3 years? I'm not following the rest of the pack. I'm not doing student body right and saying, oh, well, because the competition is there, I need to follow them. I'm going to
Hmm.
break glass and I'm going to create a whole new world for this industry. And
Hmm.
that's what Keith Kroc, Tom Siebel, Mark Benioff have done, and all the CEOs that I really uh, I inspire to be like. But they're the folks also that create visions, that create the idea of that there's more out there. There's ability to be bigger and better than you are. It's the art of the possible. And that's where I'm focused on in 2026 is to getting that vision really locked down and secure. And it's going to be different than the others because I can tell you that where I see this industry is going. It's so much opportunity in front of it that that's where we need to establish. The others are all following each other. They're going into over a cliff. This is going to be the opportunity. So I'm creating the vision. I'm looking at the messaging changing as well. And then I'm also looking at the different ways to have a force multiplier in our sales process. So how do we build out our indirect channel even more so than ever, where we're doing more revenue sharing, co-selling with our partners so that we're able to not only get more feet on the street and reselling and co-selling together where they're selling our product and vice versa. And that's really where the opportunity lies, because if I can get a GSI partner that's got 250 sales folks globally, and they can help sell our product together, that's going to be much more powerful than just a handful of sales folks in North America. So they're the three areas that I'm really, really focused on in doing for 2026.
Let me ask you a couple of follow-up questions there. Specifically, so first, the vision. How do you train your brain to be a visionary, right? In other words, like you're thinking, you want you have a vision for the future. One of my favorite thing to talk about on this podcast and just sort of the high level, maybe you and I talked about it when we were offline, is vision, strategy, and execution, right? And so you have a vision as far as where you see yourself, where you see the company, where you see the organization going by a certain period of time, right? And then the strategy. Okay, well, strategically, how are we actually going to get there, right? In terms of who are the which directions we need to go in. You just mentioned, for instance, more partnerships or indirect selling, right? That's a strategic decision, right? And then execution, right? The people that we need, the technology that we need, like all that stuff, right? But to me, I feel like the vision is always the hardest one to sort of, I don't know what it is, like execute. In other words, if you're not a vision, you mentioned Mark Benioff, Tom Siebert, like clearly visionaries, right? Like how do you train your brain to see the unseeable of something, something that's never been seen before? What are you doing? What are your exercises? Is it a gift? Tell me about it.
I almost lean in it is a gift, but it is about being able to see around corners.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I don't know, it's like going back as a little kid, right? And it's building that playhouse. It's like, but it's the idea of how much bigger can I get it? How much, what could I do differently? It's going to make this really cool. Like, how do I do this? That's going to make, like, I never in all my life have ever wanted to be someone who's average. I never wanted to be the person who is just a part of the herd. I always wanted to be someone who's thinking about things in a different way, ways that can shake up the tree, shake up the industry, and really be someone that can say, wow, yeah, it's good now, but what if you did this? What if you made a little tweak? And that's the exciting part that keeps us alive. And it's just been that thing in me. Listen, I'm the youngest of 5 kids, and you practically raise yourself because by the 5th kid, nobody even knows you exist. So it's like, how do you be creative, and you can't afford the toys and the cool little things. So you got to have that kind of imagination. And I think that's a lot of where it is. And it's also about how can you make someone's life easier? How do you not only make it better, but how do you make it more efficient, more productive? A tool that's more product market ready, where folks are like, God, I've been waiting for this. This is so awesome. And it's combining all of those ideas to create that vision. Now, it's also going over and beyond what the vision is so that you can peel it back. And what you peel back is really where you're going to land, and it's still going to be super powerful. But it's really able to have that vision. And I just see that where we are today and what it can be, I have it in my head already, and I'm just making sure that our product team, our engineers know what I'm looking at, and then I'm patient about how we're building it. But I want to talk about the vision. I want to let everyone know that I'm thinking where they are. In fact, you know what, Jay, you go do your job, and I'm going to go and I'm going to think for you about where this industry is going to go, because you're always going to get new feature, new functionality. There's going to be a new something out there that you weren't even paying attention to, but I was, because that's what I do. I want to make this better and make it easier. So that's So that's kind of where I'm going with it. But I guess it's more of a, it's kind of the way you grow up,
Yeah.
and just being excited for the industry that you're in, which is software and technology, which I love.
Yeah, I think part of the key too is curiosity, right? Because I think your curiosity leads you to that vision because you're
Oh,
constantly because you were just doing it there, right? You're constantly asking these unanswered questions that nobody's asking, right? And I think if you're able to ask questions that nobody's asking, you're going to get answers that nobody's going to get because you're asking the
bingo.
questions, right? I
Yes.
told my kids a couple
Yes.
weeks ago, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world, but you do have to be asked. You do have to understand the questions to ask so you can elicit the right information in order to make the decisions that you want to make and all those things. So I think that's really really important. Um, Indirect channel. You mentioned you want to do more of that. The question I have is how much are you getting? How much of your sales now is coming from that channel? And then if you quantify that for let's say a goal in 2026, how much of a percentage of your sales should that do you want to have happen?
Yeah. So it's a tricky spot to be in right now because this industry is so nascent. It's so
Mm,
early stage that, and just like in the early stage of Salesforce, when we started to talk about on demand back then, and how quickly you could get deployed, and the ability to customize and configure on your own, that was not an area where partners or in the indirect channel wanted to go, because there's really no money in it for it if you're going to tell me that you can do everything for us. And it was early stage, and obviously as Salesforce grew up, it was clear that you do need that indirect channel to help you not only build out but also to help sell.
mm,
And this industry right now is one that, right now, I would say we get about 10%, 15% of the business through the indirect channel, but that will definitely jump up because what I'm seeing right now, Jay, is, and this is always a really good sign to know that you're in the right industry, is that you've got a lot of the GSIs looking at wanting to meet with you, wanting to understand how do we combine their services with your tool to provide even more value to not only the customers they have today, but the new customers, and then how do we sell this together, right? It's great for me to walk in and say, hey, when you deploy our product at Interos.ai, you're able to, you want to be able to leverage this GSI to come in and do the training, to be able to provide even more uh, forward thinking actionability, and take some of the ideas that AI is giving and then really, take more action. Or, hey, here's the way it should be structured based on your organization. And so there's definitely that combo. And I'd love to say, hey, I'd bring in Deloitte, bring in Accenture, bring in
mm.
PwC, bring in, and I'm sure they're going to want to try to leverage a tool like ours to provide more value to what it is outside of just a service of bringing a team in, but it's also relying on a product to give them information as well.
Yeah. So you're not gonna publicly declare a percentage goal here on 20 for
Absolutely
2026.
not. Absolutely not. Then I'm going to be held accountable for that. Not going to happen. But
That's
good
fair.
try, Jay.
Your board,
Appreciate
yeah,
that.
your board might be listening, so
Exactly.
for sure. All right, we've got to only have a few minutes left, so I feel like there's so much more that I want to talk to you about. Perhaps we do a part two in 2020, and
Let's
we can
do it.
review what we talked about
Oh,
here in 2026, and you can tell me how much your percentage was then.
we're going to crush it. Don't worry about 2026. I got to get through 2025 first.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what.
true. I was going to say, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. I'm getting ahead of us a
Right.
little bit here. All right, you ready for the rapid fire five? Or ask you five questions. Give me five answers.
I'm all set. I'm ready to
All
go.
right, here we go. Number one, what motivates you?
Uh, Being able to fulfill your own self for success, understanding that, um, there's, what was the saying? It was, success without fulfillment is failure, right?
Yeah.
So I want to
Mhm.
know that my success is fulfilling what it is that is who I am, and other than that, then I'm not doing the right thing. So,
Name a big goal you have right now, and when would you like to accomplish it? Could be personal, could be professional.
um, I would say my big goal is to take this organization to another level within the next 2 years. In other words, an IPO, or somewhere where we are the established global leader and we're dictating what happens in the industry. that to me will be my biggest goal, to say that I was able to accomplish that.
What's your preferred way to learn new information to stay sharp?
It's being humble. It's being able to not assume that because you've been doing something for so long that you are the master or the expert. It's really about being able to be humble and be willing to learn. And I can tell you that the industry or the company I'm with today, just when I thought I knew everything, I connected back to who is my CEO today, Ted Krantz, and I've it's almost I went into the master's class of selling, and it hit another level,
Wow.
and learning from him has been a game changer for me. But again, it's just being able to be humble, and being able to understand that there's more to learn. There's always more to learn, and there's always the ability to strengthen those muscles.
Love it. Growth minded. Who's your favorite character of all time?
In terms of
I love
movies, actors,
Yes, could be anything. Could be movies, could be TV, could be the character down the street that when you see when you're taking out the trash. could be, could be, could be anybody. If it's the character down the street, you got to explain why because nobody
no,
would know who
I'm
it
not going that path. Uh, Listen, uh, I'm a big movie fan, right? I spent years acting so early on, and I can tell you that I appreciate that that world, and it's a little bit of like selling, right? I mean,
is. Yeah.
the entertainment, the creative side of it, and I would tell you that, and my kids would laugh at me for saying this, but I'm a big Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones fan. So
Mm.
it's that ability to be on a journey, its ability to have a goal and to go after it and to achieve it, and then along the way having fun with what you're going to run into. That is uh, the unplanned. It's the sudden changes and whatever, and that's the story of Indiana Jones, right? I mean, he's out to go try to find something, and he's got a journey in between, and it's the fun of being on that journey to achieve that goal. And just like Indiana Jones, I'm going to achieve and get what I want out of that journey. So that's why I think I'm probably closer to looking at that person, Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones role.
I love it. It's fantastic. He's played so many great characters. I
Oh,
started thinking of remember The Fugitive? How great was that movie?
of course, there's a whole list of other ones that he's been in,
Yeah.
but Indiana Jones, I can tell you, Jay, it's kind of funny because my house, my kids are out, and a couple are in college, and one was saying, "Oh God, here's Indiana Jones again." I have it on record. I can memorize the words, but it's like you get lost in those type of things, and
Yeah.
but it's fun.
I love it. That's fantastic. What's your favorite thing to do when you aren't working? Number five.
Oh man, um, what I'm really starting to and I made sure this was always a part of my career, which was being as in touch with my family as I can be. I've been married for almost 30 years. I've got three kids, two are out of college, one's in college, and it's really being able to spend time with them, because what I've noticed, Jay, is like life is so short in so many ways
Hmm.
that, and throughout my career, I've always made sure I was around for my kids for breakfast, lunch, dinner, for any event. Because at the end of the day, I can look back and there's so many meetings that I don't remember, emergencies that blew up. But I can tell you, I do remember the ballet, the baseball game,
Yeah.
that game. And it's like, that to me is the most important thing. And being with my family and experiencing their lives and being able to be a part of that is the most important thing, that I think is what drives me, and what I live for.
Yeah, no doubt. I love that. You ready to? So I have a bonus part, which is for you to ask me what you. Well, no, actually, before we get that, I have a question from the last guest that I would like to ask you, and then I'll ask you to ask me a question for the next guest. All right, sound good?
Yeah.
Last question. Question from the last guest: when have you bet on someone, and how has that helped you find meaning and fulfillment as a leader?
When have I bet on someone?
Yep, when you bet on someone. And just for context, he wrote a book called Bet on People. His name's Tanvir Bango. He was executive sales leader at at Toast for a while, among other things. But so yeah, so his whole thing is betting on people. So when have you bet on someone, and how has that helped you find meaning and fulfillment as a leader?
Well, I can tell you a good leader will have a following of folks that will join them in any organization they go to. And I'm very fortunate to have that relationship connections with a number of folks, um, because again, it goes back to trust, and having that trust in betting on, it's not just one person. When I build a team or build an organization, it's built on the folks that I trust, I believe in, because I don't need to babysit them. They know what they need to do. They know what my tolerance is for, and they know that I respect them, not only professionally but personally. So
Mm-hmm.
if they need to get to a family event or whatever, I trust that, yeah, they'll spend 3 4 hours there. They'll be there, gone a day or two, but they'll make it up because they know they need to do what they need to do. And that's where I think it's just being able to have a following that you bet on. And
Mm-hmm.
when you build a company, you want to build it on the people that you trust, and it's a mutual trust, and that's why it's really important. So I constantly am betting, and my success is not my success; it's on those folks that I've brought into many organizations that have helped me to be successful, and hopefully I can. They'll say the same of my efforts with them, but that's really a game changer for me, is being able to say that, um, I'm very fortunate to have enough folks that believe in me that they will join me in new organizations.
Yeah, they're betting on you too. That's right. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, very interesting.
yeah, reciprocal.
Uh, what question would you like for me to ask my next guest?
um, if you were given, or if you made $1 billion, would you stay in the game, or would you retire and spread that wealth around, or would you get back in the game? Uh, and I tell you, it's a question, Jay, that I scratch my head on when
Hmm.
you see so many folks that are billionaires. They've made $100 million. They made, but yet they're still in the game. And to me, um, and I think it's more of the mindset, the DNA that's in you. You know, like I said, I youngest of 5 kids. You grow up with nothing.
Yeah,
To me, it's like, hey, I want to enjoy life. Like I want to take that, and I want everyone to enjoy as much
yeah,
as I'm enjoying, as I can spread it out as much as I can. But
yeah,
yet, you see so many folks today that are still working, and they haven't distributed. They'll wait until they're 100 years old. But I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the mentality that wants somebody to stay in the game versus I'd spend every moment with my children. I'd spend every moment with somebody who's sick. I would spend every
yeah,
moment helping and paying it forward, right?
yeah,
If I could go out and take that money and help build a playground, help do, but watch the excitement on somebody's face when you're able to give back, or to be able
yeah,
to make it better for them. Man, if
yeah,
I youngest of 5 kids, if somebody would have done that for me, my eyes would have lit up, right? And
yeah,
said, "Wow, you're spending time to do this with me."
yeah,
That to me is more fulfilling than work, right? Work is
yeah,
a means to an end. Work is a
yeah,
means for me to pay it forward, to help others out, to see that light bulb go off in their face. That to me is important. The family, but
yeah.
there's others that go the other way, and I'm really curious as to, like, who are those folks and why? Why do you do that? Why would you go that route?
It's interesting because I've asked myself that same question in a number of different ways. And when you were just saying that, there's two things that come to mind because I've thought about it. First word is love. In other words, they just love what they do, right? Like truly, truly, truly love it. But what they love is the second part of what I'm thinking about, which is the process, the journey, right? In other words, I was watching something the other day. I can't remember what it was, but it was like, is the journey, is the destiny, is what is it? Is the goal the destination, or is the goal the journey? In other words, and I think for them, I feel like the destination is the journey. It's kind of like Kobe Bryant would look at it, right? Just loved the process so much. I think like if you look at all the top athletes as an example, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, whatever, LeBron James, I feel like they love that game so much that if their bodies didn't betray them or break down, they would just continue on. And if you look at business, to me, it's probably the same thing, right? The Mark Benioffs of the world. And it's just kind of like, Jeff Bezos, right? It's kind of, they just love that journey. Like that's their, like that end goal for them is they're living it right now. I don't know. I mean, that's the only thing I've got,
I love that's a great explanation.
Yeah.
Uh, because quite frankly, I haven't had a chance to really figure out what one, a good one is. So that's a
Yeah.
really good one. But for
Yeah.
me, it's like, well, think about all the things you've never done in the sense that like you want to learn how to play an instrument.
Yeah.
You want to be it. But for me, it's more of that giving back
Yeah.
and being able to, man, I love a story where someone is helping out like the underprivileged or trying to figure out how do I take someone like, like I said, like the youngest of five kids, like
Mm,
where like being able to go back to a younger Chris Lee and
mm,
say, hey, I got you, right?
mm,
You know,
mhm.
let me, show you the light rather
Yeah.
than because when you're at that age, when you're a young person, you don't have the safety net, right?
Right.
So, and
Mm,
I'm very, when I look at my career, my life, it's like there's so many decisions that are made that that if you fail, you hit the bottom, right? You
yeah.
will hit the bottom. There's no safe. There's no one there
No,
to catch you on that. There's
that's
no
it.
family doesn't have all the money in the world.
Yep.
But the one thing that I can tell you out of that comes
Mm,
out of that is that you're not afraid to fail,
yeah.
right? Because you've been to the bottom. So you know how bad it's going to get. So that's where it's like, I wish I could go back to that young kid and say, hey, I got you. So
It's like, yeah. Well,
yeah,
speaking of young kid, it's like not being afraid of the dark anymore because you've been in the dark. But yep, you couldn't pay for the lights, so
right. You can't pay for
you're
the
like, okay,
electric.
now I know what now the dark I
Turn off the
lived. Okay,
darkness. I'll be
exactly.
here all day. Yeah,
That's right.
no, that
That's
is a
what it
lot of
is.
fun.
That's what it is. Well, man, this has been a great conversation, Chris. I knew it would be because we've had a great
Yes.
conversation prior to hitting record. I mean,
Yeah.
you're just a wealth of energy and
Thank you.
information and all that wonderful stuff. If people want to learn more about you, about Interos, maybe ask a question that I didn't have time to ask today, how could they follow up with you and perhaps just say thank you?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, Jay. This has been just an absolutely awesome discussion. You and I could sit and talk for another 2, 3 hours. There's so many things that you and I have unpacked.
Like, so
Uh,
true.
but I would say that if you feel like reaching out to me, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or I have a personal email of cdlee3030 at gmail.com, or that's probably the easiest way to reach me right now if you want to talk. Or I always have a bunch of other ideas, and I'm always happy to share them. And if I can help anyone out, I'm here.
Fantastic. Chris Lee, thank you so much. And by the way, when you reach out to him, make sure you put the Goats of Growth in the subject line so he pays extra special attention to your email for sure. That'll jump right out at him in his already crowded inbox for sure. Um, and don't forget to thank you for listening to this episode. Of course, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Tell your friends, colleagues, the character down the street that Chris didn't want to talk about, and anybody and
There's
anybody
plenty of
else.
those.
Yeah, right. And anybody else that will find value in episodes like this and others. Thank you. Thanks, Chris, for being a guest on the Goats of Growth. Goodbye, everybody.